Hello again, Denny Johnson here, and this is a question and answer session. The question today was provided by Hanata from Brazil. Hanata asked a question about inflammation, and especially inflammation in the abdomen or appendicitis or something like this. The topic of inflammation is a very big topic because it involves obviously the entire body. But at least let's look at some of the theories or the principles about why we call inflammation an anger issue or something relative to the experience of passion or the blood. Here's what we're looking at. The experience of the family tree in the body. We've talked about how there is the bottom of the spine that regulates the experience of life force, regulated by the personal will and humility. The next level up has to do with the feeling level of the ladder. This feeling level has two sides to it. It has the cooling side, the water side, related to the bladder and the kidney and the bowels and the skin and everything on the mother's side of the family. The opposite side of this polarity has to do with the fire side. This is related to one's own personal passion. And this is a place where the life force from the bottom of the spine is directed by the kidney and adrenal function to go higher into the physical systems. This is related to also the life force found in the blood. Now, according to this basic use or paradigm, theory if you wish, that inflammation is an experience of anger. So where the inflammation occurs and or a specific location of it indicates the likelihood of a particular form of anger and also the likely topic. For example, if you get anger in one specific place, like the liver, you're going to end up with specific symptoms in one location. When you get a symptom in one location, it is most often about one person in the family tree. Hence, most of the time when we have a specific issue of inflammation in one organ in some form or another, it's usually an anger pattern from one ancestor in the family tree. Now, when this has occurred, for example, in the position number 3, which by the way happens to be father's father's mother, if that great-grandmother had a tendency toward anger, rage, or hatred, then there is a genetic trigger in the person 3 generations later. So that when that person now begins to express a similar characteristic, rage, anger, hatred, it triggers that response in the liver to produce an inflammation of some form or another. That inflammation is going to have a different display according to the feelings or the direction of the anger. For example, if the anger is about a large group, like a religious group, where all Muslims hate all Christians, or all Christians hate all Jews, or all Protestants hate all Catholics, or so on and so on, when the anger is about a religious form directed toward another religion in some form or another, like rage, then that inflammation or the anger is an eruption of red on the skin. Now, this can also be related to shingles, hives, and herpes, boils, and things that come out of the skin. This is where the anger or the rage is now coming to the surface. But when the anger is directed inward, then now that can be more of a system of the body attacking a specific location, gland, organ, or other body system. For example, you can get the lymphatic system, the immune system attacking the liver, you get one type of symptom. You get the immune system attacking the blood, you get another symptom. Now, when the immune system is involved in some form of reaction down into the appendix, oftentimes the appendix is this location here, which is oftentimes what's called the two-boy position. The two-boy position is the fire position. This is very important. This fire position is related to the father and the father's father. Now, if I have a strong relationship to my father, and I have a strong relationship to my father's father, then my access to more fire increases. If I lose my relationship to my father, or my father had no relationship to his own father, then I lose my capacity to access the fire. Now, another contributing factor is the balance of the fire here that would affect the appendix or the gallbladder next to it in some form or another. This is the experience of the water line relative to mother's mother. Why is this important? Because the water line is the cooling line for the fire. So if a woman is angry at her mother, or the mother is angry at the grandmother especially, because that represents grandmother number 2, corresponds to number 2 here. If there's an anger pattern in the mother's mother, and between the grandmother and her mother, well, what happens is you begin to deny the access to the cooling, and the rage and the fire increases. Now, if a specific grandfather, number 2, is involved, it would be the appendix is one possibility, gallbladder is another possibility, and sometimes it's difficult to distinguish, but the anger pattern in this part of the body. Now, if it comes up against the next level, which is number 3, that happens to be the liver, or it moves over, which the 3 on the opposite side is the pancreas. This is a series of patterns related to how fire can burn the heart, the bowels, the adrenals, thyroid, brain. You see, bleeding into the brain is a form of fire in the brain, anger turned inward. Bleeding in the bladder is oftentimes an anger issue related to shame. So wherever the issue is relative to what it's about, such as the bowels, this is related to what's called number 4 grandmother. So we can go through each one of these one at a time sometime, because there's a whole series of them. Now, one of them that's very important is what's regulating a lot of this happens to be the bottom of the body. So for example, number 1 grandmother is the hips. We talked about the hips a bit. This is also father's mother. So father's mother has the rage in her. This can disintegrate the lower part of the body, the spine. This has caused the bone to break down. This can cause scoliosis patterns. This can cause breaking of bones, because any form of a break of the bone is a fire element out of control. So appendicitis, other forms of inflammation in the reproductive tract, and so on and so on. So why is the person having the anger? Usually anger is the result of a couple of things. I'm not getting what I want. I want something, I believe I deserve it or I should have it, and I'm angry when I don't have it. What we also don't see is the anger pattern is usually related to an unfulfilled addiction. And that unfulfilled addiction is now related to the adrenals, because there has to be a fear involved in the anger. If there were no fear, there would be no anger. So what happens down here is the absence of humility, the absence of personal integrity. The fire comes up. What happens in the process of being able to relate to it is I blame somebody else. Blame is a form of anger. This is a form of the expression of anger towards somebody else. When that happens in an organ, like the appendix, then the appendix is oftentimes relative to my personal passion. Meaning, I want to do what I want to do for me. If I can't do that for me, I'm going to get angry about it, and this is one of the triggers that can create difficulties in the appendix. The same thing is true up above this. If I can't have the kind of relationship I want to have, this produces difficulties in the solar plexus or the abdomen. This is one of the root issues here in digestion, because number 3 on the blue side is the pancreas, and that is basically a breakdown system of energy. Number 3 on the masculine side is the assimilation of things. So if this great-grandmother's not happy, and her son, the one right below, he's not happy, and they're fighting, well, welcome to the dynamics of inflammation. It's called feelings. That's what it's all about. We'll go into greater detail another time. But Ananta, thanks for the question.